والسلام, in trying to get everything that is good. We're still talking about the tongue, one of the organs, a part of our body, that once we guard the tongue, guarding everything else after that becomes easy. It's the heart, the tongue, and the different parts of the body. When the ulama, they talked about the tongue when it comes to where the iman is, in the heart and the tongue and the different parts of the body, they talked about the tongue being a separate entity, which is true, because we speak a lot, we say many things, and either we would speak what is right or we would speak what is evil, and it's forbidden for us to speak what is evil, and it's mandatory for us to do what is right and to speak what is right. So we need to give more attention to what we say with our tongues to make sure that we do not say anything except what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be pleased with us. One of the things, there is a major sin when it comes to things to be said by the tongue, and that is giving false testimonies or witnessing what is evil. This is a major sin. Shahadatu zur. When someone is in a court witnessing against a Muslim, against a non-Muslim, whatever there is, witnessing, saying that he or she saw something, and they're lying in their testimony. This is one of the major sins that the Prophet ﷺ, when the hadith, he was talking about the major sins, and he said, Akbar al-kabair, the major or the worst of the sins are shirk al-ishraku billah wa uquq al-walidain. That to associate partners with Allah and to be evil towards the parents and not to be obedient to them and so on. And then the Prophet ﷺ, while he was saying this hadith, the narrator of the hadith, he said, the Prophet ﷺ was laying down. And then after that he said, وَشَهَادَةُ الزُّورِ. Then the Prophet ﷺ stood up and he kept repeating it. Shahadatul zur, or false testimony on witnessing what is evil, made the Prophet ﷺ change in his position, and he kept repeating it to warn the Muslims, repeating it over and over again, till the narrator of the hadith, he says, till people said, لَيْتَهُ sakat, that they wished that the Prophet ﷺ would stop repeating it out of the fear for him. They felt bad for the Prophet ﷺ, that this subject made him very concerned. And because they loved the Prophet ﷺ dearly, it would concern them so much when they see the Prophet ﷺ concerned. So giving false testimony, something that made the Prophet ﷺ so concerned that he kept repeating and warning the Muslims from falling into this evil and major sin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran that one of the characteristics of the believers, وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَشْهَدُونَ الزُّورِ وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِاللَّغْوِ مَرُّوا كِرَامًا, that the believers, those who do not witness az-zur, falsehood, something that is wrong, evil, they do not witness that. They do not give testimony to something that is wrong. And this is how the believers are. They stay away from what is evil. They don't lie when it comes to testimonies and things of that nature. Shahadatul zur, or giving false testimony, has more than one version to it, if it's correct to say that. The very clear one is when a person is called to give his testimony in the court, in front of a judge, in front of a group of people, people asking a person, what did he see, what is his witnessing about a certain matter, what do you know about that person, that he wants to get married to a certain individual, for example. These are all testimonies that a person has to be truthful, and he has to say the truth, and he has to speak what is very clear, like the sun in the midst of the skies. Not something that it might be this or it might be that. When it comes to a shahada or bearing witnessing about something, it has to be very clear and has to be very obvious, and not something that has any ambiguity to it. So this is when it comes to the testimony. This is the clear example. Another thing is when people would witnessing matters of sins. And that's why when we witness lies, whether it's a movie or something like this, you are basically putting yourself in a situation where you are witnessing what is evil. And we're supposed to stay away from witnessing what is evil. Either a person would enjoin good and forbid evil if people are committing sins, or we leave. If a person is not able to do that, then he or she would leave. But to sit and to witness what is evil, to sit and to witness the disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is something that is not permissible. And this is a form of shahadat az-zur. Another form, something the Prophet ﷺ said in the authentic hadith, al-mutashabbi' bima lam yu'ta kalabisi thawbay zur. which means if someone would look like he is on something which is not true, he's as if he's immersed in a certain look or a certain attitude, but it's not him, right? As if he is wearing two forms of zur, clothing, or false appearance. And this was an answer or a statement the Prophet ﷺ said when a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said that she would say that to the other wife or the co-wife of her husband, that she would lie and say that the husband gives her this and this, and she would lie about that. So she would refer things to her when it's not true. That, for example, that she is so rich, that she has so much or so many clothings and things of that nature, which is a form of lie, of course. So this is something that the Prophet ﷺ called it, that this is a way of zur or false testimony, when a person would claim something about himself that is not true. So there's different forms of that, and we need to be aware of that. And usually the tongue plays a big role in this. Another major sin, or another sin, right, that can lead to what is even more evil when it comes to our own tongue, is to suppress our anger. We need to suppress our anger and not to act according to what anger might lead us to. Although this is not something directly an action of the tongue, but when a person is angry, he or she would say things and then they would later on regret it, whether the regret comes on the face of earth or in the day of judgment. Because when a person is angry, either a person would have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to suppress one's anger, or a person would act accordingly. And this is something that we have to be very careful. Kadhmul ghayz, or to suppress our anger, something that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith. It's mentioned in the Quran, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about the characteristics of the believers, one of which, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْضَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, that the believers are those who would suppress their anger and they would pardon people. So to suppress our anger, this is a very important thing to protect our tongues from saying what is haram. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the authentic hadith, مَنْ كَظَمَ غَيْظًا وَهُوَ قَادِرٌ عَلَى أَنْ يُنْفِذَهُ, that whoever suppresses his anger while he is capable of acting according to his anger, that he's angry, he can hit, he can cause harm, he can abuse the one that he's angry from, he can do whatever he wants, he has the power to do that. But he suppressed his anger, and he has the authority, but he suppressed his anger. What is the reward for such a person? The Prophet ﷺ said in this authentic hadith, خَيَّرَهُ اللَّهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make him choose in the day of judgment مِنَ الْحُورِ الْعِينِ مَا شَاءَ, that he would make him choose from الْحُورِ الْعِينِ, from the women of Jannah, whatever he wish, as the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for him to suppress this anger for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. A person might suppress his anger because his boss at work, for example, get him angry. And he has to suppress his anger. He has no means to act according to his anger. Why? Because he's afraid that he will be fired. This is not what is meant by the hadith. What is meant by the hadith is that you have the ability, you have no fear that nobody whatsoever would cause harm to you if you would act according to your anger. For example, towards your children, towards your workers, those who are working under you, things of that nature. And if you do whatever you do, nobody will hold you accountable on the face of earth. But you choose to suppress your anger for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a very important quality in the life of a Muslim, but it doesn't happen unless the person's heart is attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same way when it comes to all these different good qualities. And this is something that Umar radiallahu anhu said in a very beautiful statement, مَنِ اتَّقَى اللَّهَ لَمْ يَشْفِ غَيْظَهُ, which means whoever is dutiful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he won't be so keen to act according to his own anger. He will be patient. He will fulfill the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if a person have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is dutiful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he won't be that keen because his heart is attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows that there is hereafter, the day of judgment, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge among the people. And that's why also Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, وَمَنْ خَافَ اللَّهَ لَمْ يَفْعَلْ مَا يُرِيدُ, that whoever has the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he won't just do whatever he wants. Why? Because there are regulations and rules. He fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many people, they are not oppressors when they don't have the means. But once they have the means to oppress others, they become oppressors. So the point is, it's not when you don't have the means to commit injustice. No, when you have the means to be an unjust person, how do you act? So most of us, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, if we have the means, we can do many evil things. But we need to prepare ourselves and to be patient and to seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we are righteous people, not because of the environment and the surroundings and the people are treating us nice, so we treat them nice, and they speak to us nice, so we speak to them nice. This is not how the life of the Muslim. Yes, of course, a person would do that. This is something that happens from any good person. But the real faith is when a person is being in an environment or people are not treating him nice, and in return he treats them nice. When a person is just, whether he has the means or doesn't have the mean, he is doing that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, suppressing the anger for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if it wasn't for the Day of Judgment, people would have seen something else from the believers, as Umar radiallahu anhu he said. Why the believers, they acting different? Because there's Day of Judgment, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge among the people. And that's why we guard our tongues and we make sure that we protect our bodies from committing sins and disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our tongues and to protect us from falling into what is evil. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين.
قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له وبذلك أمرت